and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Marietta, and today I'm here with Conny Wladkowski. I hope I said that right. If not, I apologize. So, Conny, how do you deal when the shit gets real? Or just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, the first thing I do is stop and breathe and really start collecting my thoughts. I am a hypnotherapist, so when the shit get real, I use my own hypnotic tools and I use the strategies that I tell my clients. And that's really just stopping, using a strategy, taking a deep breath, and then relook at the situation. Because quite often we then realize it's not as bad or as serious or as shitty as we thought it is.
Ain't that the truth? We do tend to get caught up in the chaos of what we think is going on.
100%. But yeah, let me introduce myself. So my name is Conny Wladkowski, and I am a hypnotherapist, author, speaker, and I specialize in anxiety and in trauma relief. And my specialty is healing from trauma without regression. This is also what I travel all over the world about and present. I'm going to Switzerland in June and then twice to the US in July and August. And all of these conferences, I talk about how we can help clients heal from past experiences, whether it was trauma, non-trauma, however we want to label it. But the key factor is always without having to go back into the story and talk about the story over and over again. That's my passion. That's what I love doing. And anxiety relief as well.
I love how you made the key point to say without regression. I think that's amazing. Why do you think that's so important? I'd love to hear you elaborate on that.
Because a lot of people, when they seek help and they go down the traditional therapy approach, it is a lot about talking about the event and about the story. And that's kind of the model of the traditional approach, is to talk about it. Now, they talk about it with their therapist. They talk about it with their friends. They have that self-talk about it, maybe relive the trauma or go back over those old stories over and over again. But essentially, if you look at the neuroscience of the brain, this is actually what keeps people stuck. Talking and thinking about it over and over again, what it does to the brain is it actually lights up that same neural network that was activated back then. And the brain thinks it's happening again right now. Every time we talk about it, every time we think about it, for the neuroscience, according to the science of the brain feels like it's happening again. So I believe that it keeps people stuck. And I'm not saying that talking about it once, that can be extremely liberating and really important for some people. It's just the talking about it over and over again that can often be really counterproductive for our clients.
Absolutely. And what got you passionate about the topic? Were you dealing with your own trauma and your own anxieties?
Yeah, so hypnosis was actually the one thing that helped me overcome overcome trauma and anxiety. Because before I tried hypnotherapy was my last resort. And that's most of my clients come and they say they've tried everything. So I went down the traditional approach and I tried alternatives and I tried many other things, all the way up to medication to manage the anxiety. But as I said, manage the anxiety. It doesn't cure the anxiety. And hypnosis was kind of my last resort. And within a couple of weeks, the anxiety got less, and so much so that I decided to then become a hypnotherapist. Because it was such a life-changing experience for me. That's something that was such a big problem for me that I actually thought I would never be able to overcome. I was suddenly able to overcome. So much so that I decided then to become a hypnotherapist, but also then specialize in anxiety and in trauma relief.
That was probably very liberating for yourself to finally feel that relief of not constantly feeling burdened with anxiety all the time.
It was huge. I mean, at my worst point, I had daily panic attacks. At that time, my firstborn was a year old. And I remember one specific moment. We were sitting on the beach. It was like a yearly family holiday. And I watched my husband and her playing in the sand and laughing. She was just crawling in the sand and started pulling herself up. And there was me on the sideline and I was crying. And I don't know what it was. It was something, again, that made me anxious that whole holiday. And I looked at them and I'm like, I wanna enjoy the joy, but I can never be. I was never able to be present. I was always consumed in my worries and in my own thoughts. And when I saw them, that was really the moment where I'm like, okay, well, I need to find something else. I need to try something else, which then was hypnotherapy.
So that's what truly led you to hypnotherapy.
100%. And then I decided after I overcome anxiety with hypnosis, I then was like, okay, well, I was feeling much better, but my dream was then to become a hypnotherapist, but I still had no confidence. I still had no self-belief. I still had no self-love. I had a fear of being seen. I had a fear of being heard. I would have never been able to see a client like that. So then I was like, okay, well, I still have that unresolved trauma that is weighing me down, obviously, that I need to heal from. But in my mind at that time, I thought, oh, I have to go back and relive it. Now I've done that for 20 years. So I was like, okay, that's kind of what stopped me then. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to study the neuroscience of the brain. I did hear a little bit about non-regression, so I was starting to get interested in that. And that's when I decided, okay, well, I'm going to really go deeper into that. And I'm going to search and find, let's say, a better and easier way to overcome trauma. So then I've really put everything that I've learned and everything that I've experienced, everything that's worked for me, everything that I felt like was lacking in my Shine trauma release process, which is the process that I've created that, as I said, I present at all the conferences. And this is a combination of my own healing journey, of hypnosis, neuroscience, coaching, NLP, EFT. It's a blend of everything.
And why do you personally believe that hypnosis is one of the strongest tools?
Because when we look, for example, let's look at anxiety as an example. So anxiety is a subconscious problem, because when we look at our mind, we have the conscious part of the mind, subconscious part of the mind. Conscious part of the mind is 5 to 10% of what we do. 90 to 95% of how we act, feel, and react comes from the subconscious mind. Now, we know anxiety is a subconscious problem because otherwise you could say to someone who is anxious, hey, this, and this, and this are all the reasons you don't need to be anxious. And they'd be like, oh yeah, okay. But those conscious reasons for someone that has anxiety and panic attacks, those conscious reasons, they don't work because they don't go into the subconscious mind. And I like to use the example of a smoker because it's very easy to understand. So people that smoke on a conscious level, they know it's unhealthy. But the fact that it's unhealthy is not as strong as whatever the programming is in the subconscious mind, which could be, it's what relaxes me. It's my reward. So they almost deny the fact that, okay, it could be really harmful because that belief that what it gives them good is stronger. And this is why when we work with someone with anxiety, telling them, hey, you got no reason to be anxious and everything is fine, it doesn't work. So this is why hypnosis is the most powerful, because it is a subconscious problem. It's a subconscious programming. And when we have a subconscious programming, we need to work with the subconscious mind because that's where it's rooted in. It's the same with weight loss. A person that wants to lose weight, they know they shouldn't be eating that piece of chocolate, but then they eat it anyway. So it's that constant battle between what I know I shouldn't be doing, but then what is it that I'm really doing? And with hypnosis, we can really align the subconscious and conscious mind. So then it's not a daily battle. And that's what I look at. So I don't really just work as a hypnotherapist that I put someone in hypnosis. Yes, that's a big part, but I also work with the conscious part of the mind. So when I work with anxiety clients, I educate my clients about anxiety because there's many myths and misconceptions about anxiety that keep people stuck. They're a belief that we've learned in our society, such as, you know, when we look at trauma, a lot of people think in order to heal from trauma, you need to talk about it. Now, I educate my clients. That's not the fact. With anxiety, people have the belief, I don't know, anxiety runs in my family. Anxiety is part of my identity. I'm just an anxious person. That was my belief. Because everybody used to tell me that. Everybody used to say, oh, that's just who you are. You just always worry. So then I actually thought, okay, maybe that's just maybe a personality trait. I learned anxiety is a habitual behavior in the brain. Now, a behavior or a habit, I can change. If it's part of my identity, it almost feels like you can't change it. So that's where a lot of that education comes in that I really do with my clients. I want my clients to understand what is going on in their brain and why I need them to use certain strategies. Because when they understand it, they're going to do it.
Yeah. You're making me want to get hypnotized right now. So tell us more about your Shine program.
So the Shine program is actually, I've just published a book. I'll show it up. I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, I just published my book a couple of months ago. And it's actually about a specific client that I've helped through the Shine protocol. And I've written the book in a way that other hypnotherapists can learn out of the book, but then also people that have experienced trauma themselves can see and maybe find the hope in finding a way of healing from it. Because when I started with that particular client from that book, she actually hadn't left the house, I think, in about 3 or 4 years.
Oh my goodness.
So she experienced trauma at her workplace. And what happened was, to the point where she was too scared to leave the house. And at that time, Corona just hit. So we were in lockdown anyway in Melbourne for like a year. So everything started shifting online, which kind of helped her in that moment. But what happened was her comfort zone just got smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point where I think the only appointment she attended was a doctor's appointment that she had to attend in person. Everything else she did online, all the way up to I would say grocery shopping. She didn't even do grocery shopping for many years. And when she approached me, she had already been in the traditional therapy approach for whatever 3-4 years, has done psychs and medication. And the way she told me that was like that she dreaded all her appointments because she felt like she just felt worse after each appointment. And when she contacted me, she had hit rock bottom and lost all hope. But what was happening was that she had to attend a certain appointment in person, which was responsible or which was important for her financial stability for the rest of her life. So that was an appointment she needed to attend. And she's like, if I don't attend that appointment, I've got nothing to live for anymore, basically. So yeah, this is about her journey and how I've helped her with the Shine protocol. And it talks about, what the process I've taken her through. But then what I love about this book as well is there's a chapter that she's written, how she felt during the process. There's a chapter that she's written where she was 2 years later. And then after each chapter, I've copied in the messages she would have sent me after the session, what's shifted for her, what's gotten better for her, where she's still struggling, what do we need to work on. So yeah, it's a beautiful book, and it comes from the heart, and it was very important for her as well to get her story out there and for her to be like, wow, look, this is what I've accomplished. I'm part of this. So yeah, it's a beautiful joint project. And when we look at the Shine protocol, it's all about healing without regression. And it's all about, that's what I'm about, empowering my clients. Because when you look at a hypnotic approach, 4 or 5 sessions is usually enough to clear up anxiety and the main problems. Yes, you can always work longer with a client, and I end up working a lot longer with her because it was just so great to work with her, and I could just see how much she was thriving. But the key is that I want my clients to be empowered, that no matter what challenge comes their way, they now can deal with those challenges. I don't want any client to start depending on me. And that's the difference. When we think of a traditional therapy approach, people always talk about, I've been in years and years of therapy. When we look at the hypnotic approach, 4, 5, 6 sessions should be the main core to start clearing up the first few problems. And then really the client to be able to use strategies to overcome the next thing. And when I talk about strategies, those tools, I call them mindset shift tools. So those tools, can stop negative thoughts, or they can stop a panic attack within 30 to 50 seconds. And those tools that I teach my clients, I still use them myself. I mean, yes, back then I used them when I was telling you when I had daily panic attacks, but now I use them when I published my book. It was scary to publish a book. You know how many limiting beliefs I had come up of publishing a book? Or when I travel the world and present, and I wake up in the morning before my presentation, I get nervous. It was only about really 3 years ago when I traveled to the States for the very first time that I had a huge fear of public speaking, like to the point where I would like vomit and shake before I had to get up anywhere. And I actually did push myself out of my comfort zone because I felt like, hey, I'm telling my clients to push themselves out of their comfort zone. So who am I to not do it? So my clients were my biggest motivator to be like, I'm going to overcome that fear of public speaking. And now I travel the world and do it all over the world. And I love it. It's something I thought I would never going to be good. Like I thought it's just not my thing. Public speaking is just not my thing. But yeah, it is. It turns out it is my thing.
Well, first of all, I love that y'all co-authored it together. I think that's fantastic. Plus, it gives readers both sides, which is very helpful usually. And yeah, I mean, it's funny how sometimes when you push yourself out of the comfort zone, you actually find out that you really like the thing that you thought that you hated.
It is so funny. I mean, at my last convention, I went to even won the award for the best presentation. When 3 years ago, I was like, I just want to do one presentation just to have done it and to say, okay, well, you know, I've really pushed myself. And that's one of the things that I tell my clients is, you know, let's say with a client with a book. So after session 2, her little task was to go to the grocery shopping for the first time again. Because I know that was one of the things where she's like, I can't even go shopping. Like, you know, that just lowers your confidence and your self-belief when you feel like a thing that people do every day, I can't do anymore. So when I get my clients to do a task after each session. And I don't tell them what to do. We work it out together. You know, it's obviously something in relation they want to achieve, but it also has to be something that is not crazy out of their comfort zone. I want it to be doable for them. And I equip them with the strategies that if they start to feel uneasy or a bit of a panic coming up, they can stop it. So they come with the tools. And then the second thing is, you know, with her, we worked it out. I'm like, okay, well, pick a time that's not the busiest and just write down 5 things that you want to get. So it's all about setting yourself up for success. Because what we do is we tend to sabotage ourselves. So she could go at the busiest time with no shopping list and then come home and say, see, I freaked out and I couldn't do it. I could have gone to my first presentation completely unprepared and freaked out. I prepared so well for my first presentation. And that was important. That was key that I was prepared. Because I could have gone up there, not prepared, maybe not done a good job, and then went around and say, see, I'm not good at public speaking. It's just not my thing. So it's all about setting yourself up for success. So we send her equipped with all of those things. And she came home and she's like, oh my God, I did my first shopping trip again. But then what I tell my clients, and this is what I applied then, is like, okay, well, you've done it once. That's amazing. Now I need you to do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Just do it 2, 3, 4 times. Because doing it one time and then not doing it for 2 months, but 2 months later, you're in the same position again. Because you're not creating a habit by doing something once. So that's when I said, okay, well, I can't just do that. Yes, I'm proud that I did my first presentation, but I really signed up for a couple of conferences afterwards. Because to be honest, the second time was just as scary as the first time. And now, as I said, I love it. But it all happened because I started creating that habit out of it. And when people say to me, oh, I'm just not confident, it's just because you haven't done it. The things you're confident in is the things you've done multiple times. I mean, I'm pretty sure you were nervous when you did your first podcast interview, and now you're a lot more confident going into every interview.
Yeah. I've talked about this with a friend of mine. The only difference between it is it's just a skill. You've just learned a skill.
That's it. And when you look at kids, they learn how to ride a bike. They don't stop and say, oh, I'm not good enough after the first time. They jump on it and on it and on it until they know how to ride a bike. And that's exactly with everything what it is. So I tell my clients, you know, when you feel like you're not, and like, don't get me wrong, I had the biggest belief that I'm not a confident person. But then someone said to me, you know, it's about confidence is the belief in your ability. And he's like, I'm sure there's certain things you're confident about. Everybody has certain things they're confident about, and it might not be the thing they're thinking about. It might not be that public speaking. It might not be the confidence, let's say, in social settings. But they're confident maybe in the job they do every day. They might be confident in cooking. They might be confident in their ability to exercise. It doesn't matter. We all have confidence in some area. And it's now applying that confidence and creating that confidence in other area. And that's really pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and then just doing it a couple of times. And then you can find out, hey, do I enjoy it? Like what surprised me the most, that I enjoy it? Or is it just not my thing? And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So does the letters in SHINE stand for something?
Yes, each letter stands for an important part in the process. So when I look at the SHINE, the letter S stands for safe. So session 1 is all about creating a safe space for my clients, because a lot of them have experienced severe trauma. They might have come from the traditional approach and they might have talked about the topic over and over again. Then I just say to them, you know what? At the end of the day, when I look at the process I'm taking them through, I'm more looking at, okay, what is holding you back today? What is it that's holding you back today? Not what is the past story, what happened 30 years ago. When someone comes from the traditional approach and I know they've talked about it over and over again, I try to shift them out of talking about it in a gentle way. I don't want them to talk about it for the full hour. We're not going to get anywhere. So yes, I let them start talking, and then I might say, all right, tell me exactly, how is it affecting you today? So I try to nudge them back into, hey, we're in today and that's what we're going to clear up. Now, if a client says to me, you know what, you're the first person that I've ever reached out, I want to create a safe space for them, maybe to feel safe to open up and say, hey, this is actually what's happened and I've never talked about it. And that's okay as well. Both of those work the same. It's just about me giving them the space, that space where they feel safe to say how much or as little as they want. And it's really, session 1 is all about creating trust and creating rapport. So then we can move on, because then the next letter H, is healing. So that's when we're going into the healing of the trauma. That's when I use a very new scientific approach, which is called therapeutic memory reconsolidation, where we heal that emotional neural network of the trauma. And that we can do beautifully without even knowing the story. So with a client with a book, I just know she was abused at her workplace. That's all I know. I don't know any other details, and I was able to help her. And that's the beautiful thing about this process, that we can just go straight into it and clear it. Then letter I is inspire forgiveness. So that's when I go into the forgiveness. Now, again, forgiveness is one of those things. I do educate my clients about forgiveness first, what it means, because a lot of people think forgiveness means saying to the person, hey, it's okay what you did. Now, I'm not going to get a client to say to a person, hey, it's okay that you raped me or abused me. But when we can look at forgiveness from a different point of view and say, oh, well, forgiveness is giving back to yourself. It's taking your power back. Because as long as we are holding on to resentment towards a person or a situation, they have the power still over us. So there's a little bit of education, because some people come straight away and say, I am not going to forgive. It's not going to happen. And I'm not going to force them. But sometimes when we can change that perspective, they might suddenly be open to it. And then sometimes I say, you know what? Why don't we just say we're letting go? We're letting go. Or maybe let's leave the people out and let's say forgive the event. I just want them to shift into that forgiveness somehow where it feels right for them. I'm not going to force them to do it. But with this approach, everyone has always said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. Now then, key thing is self-forgiveness, because we can be very kind with everyone around us, and then very harsh with ourselves. So I always put in self-forgiveness. I think that's always very freeing and liberating. And then letter N stands for negative beliefs. So what are the limiting beliefs that the client is carrying around? What are the limiting beliefs that are sabotaging our everyday life? Because when you look at limiting beliefs, they actually really create our reality. If I have a belief I'm not good enough, that's what I'm going to see, hear, feel, attract, and subconsciously also act that way. I'll give you an example. Let's say if someone has a limiting belief that they're always going to be abandoned and every partner will cheat on them. Maybe because that happened to their mom and they saw it in their childhood, and then they maybe had an unhealthy relationship, and then finally they find a partner that is really loving and caring. they might sabotage subconsciously that relationship by maybe being controlling, checking the message, whatever. There's many ways of sabotaging it. But then that person leaves them and they're like, see? So it's interesting how we do sabotage ourselves. And I tell you a funny story. When I applied for my first conference, as I was saying, to overcome my fear of public speaking, I so tried to sabotage the application that I wouldn't get chosen. And I just thought about it yesterday, because what happens is it's really hard to get into those conferences. Now, I have colleagues and I have mentors, that encourage me to go. And I didn't name anyone. I just pretended I'm a nobody and I applied for this conference. I didn't ask anyone how to apply. When I look at my application to how I apply now, and I was subconsciously like, if they don't choose me, I've tried. I've tried to overcome my fear of public speaking. It's not meant to be. And they chose me. And then I fell pregnant and I couldn't even travel. So it was just funny how this all happened. But yeah, subconsciously, I could have asked people and said, hey, I'm applying. Can you, because they say write references. They always ask for references. So I didn't write a single reference down. And all of them were like, why didn't you write me down? And I'm like, no, because I wanted to try it by myself. But I know subconsciously I was kind of hoping that there's a way out and I wasn't going to get chosen. So that's where limiting beliefs comes in. And then the final letter is E, and that stands for empowerment. What I teach my clients tools that they can stop any unwanted behavior or thought in an instant. And the way I work with my clients, we have our sessions, and then they have login details to an online program, to an app, where everything I teach them is in there. So they get hypnosis recordings to listen to. All the strategies that I teach them are pre-recorded in there, so they can go back and rewatch it. There's more in there that I can do in the sessions, because otherwise, I need to work a lot longer with each client. But there's a lot of stuff in there that I've just put in there. And at the end of the day, it's up to the client how much they're going to invest in the additional part of the program, because I always want my clients to be responsible for their healing, because I can't fix them. If they don't apply the strategies I give them, I can't help them. If they don't ever listen to a hypnosis recording, I can't help them. But I really tell them, if you invest 5 weeks and follow the program, you are going to see shifts. If you don't do anything, not much is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You kind of touched on this already, how we do so much for other people, but we always drag our feet on doing things for ourselves. It's kind of crazy.
I think that's where the sabotaging stuff comes in,
Yeah. And something else I read in your bio when I was getting ready to chat with you is that you talked about how some people get stuck in survival. So why do you think some people get stuck in survival, and how we can change into that thriving?
Well, first of all, I feel like people get stuck in survival mode because they're stuck in the past story. They're stuck in something I call victim mentality. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that means they're just stuck in that. Because when you look at our brain is mainly designed to keep us safe, not happy, to keep us safe. So when our brain thinks that certain emotions or people or situations are dangerous based on those past experiences, it will keep you in survival mode. And that mode is exhausting, because the more we're in that mode, the more exhausted we are, the less we get out of it. It's like that vicious cycle that people have with anxiety. So when someone is anxious, they struggle to sleep at night. The less they sleep at night, the more anxious they are the next day. Then the less they sleep at night. And that's the same, being stuck in that survival mode, because our brain predicts the future based on those past experiences. So if someone is in survival mode, all they do is they constantly scan for threats. And that's all they pick up. They pick up all the little threats. Or this person has looked at me in that way, or that person didn't reply to a message, or this person is looking at me funny, or I didn't, whatever their survival mode is. So the key to shifting out of that survival mode is really to change our brain's predictions, which you can do with hypnosis really well. Because when we teach the brain that something new is going to happen, the brain adapts to newness. But if the brain thinks, okay, the same thing is happening over and over again, every time I do the same thing, the same outcome will happen. The brain predicts that outcome. And when we look at a memory, that's a very interesting thing. I'd love to share that with you. So people believe that a memory is a recorded video of an event. Okay, so that when we recall a memory, it's almost like we're watching that movie of that past event. But the fact is, memory is actually a creative program. So whenever whenever I recall a memory, the brain has to pull all of those different regions in together, and they create that thing called memory. Okay, so it's not a movie, it's the brain bringing all these emotions, pictures, everything together and creates that memory. But when we recall a memory becomes malleable. Okay, so when it's recreated, a memory changes. And what happens is every time we recall a memory, it changes really subtle. Okay, by maybe me telling you, let's say I talk about my childhood and then you talk about your childhood. And then suddenly I'm going to take a little part of your childhood, something you've told me in. Then maybe I talk with my brother and he's like, nah, that's not how it happened. It happened that way. Then I take a little bit of his story in. Now, the interesting thing, a memory change is so subtle that we don't realize that it's happening, to the point where we then look back and think whatever we remember from 30 years ago, we believe that that is exactly real. But we don't realize that it's changed over 30 years. So when we look, for example, at a childhood memory, I like to compare it to a Word document. When I change a Word document and I save it, I only have access to the latest version. So when we look at a childhood memory, it's contaminated by all of those years we talked about it, we thought about it, by our own change in perspective now, by what other people have told us about it. And then we feel like it's real. And sometimes you see siblings arguing about something that happened 30 years ago. They went on the same family vacation and one sibling says, "No, that's how it happened." And one says, "That's how it happened." And everyone believes that their memory is real. This is just because it's changed over the years. So when people recall a memory from 30 years ago, that's what keeps them stuck. And it might not even be exactly how it happened. It might just be because, we fill in gaps as well. We fill in gaps to make sense out of things. So sometimes when people are forced to talk about the past, they might be like, well, I can't trust men. I think I might have been abused. People do make up things. Or I've heard, or someone said something, I think that might have happened to me. But it might have actually not happened to them. So the key thing is really to get out of that repeated cycle in your brain, to get out of that victim mentality.
I've definitely witnessed what you're talking about because my mom has 6 siblings and they definitely will bicker about things that happened 30 years ago. And I'm just over here like, why? It happened 30 years ago. Why are we bickering about it? I don't understand.
Because everybody wants to say their memory is real,
Yeah. And I think another good example of that too, because I know it's happened to me, like if you get told something that happened when you were younger, like maybe before you would actually remember when you're like 2 or 3, and some people don't remember until they're older, it feels like you remember it, even though you don't really remember it, but you remember the story that somebody else told you.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And that's where there's a thing called implicit memory. And that's actually a memory that we can create the moment we are in utero. Because it's a memory that's recreated by feeling and experiences. Because as you said, an explicit memory, you need to have a certain age. And people have different ages. I don't remember much from my early childhood. And some people, my husband always said, I remember kindergarten. And I'm like, you just remember the stories that you were told. I don't think you actually remember it,
Yeah.
But with those implicit memories, the ones that you can form when you're already in utero, they are memories that are formed just by how we felt back then. Okay, so maybe mom felt, I don't know, stressed in pregnancy. Mom felt unsure about pregnancy, whatever it might be. That already can create an implicit memory in that child that then affects them growing up. Let's say a 1-year-old child, a baby is bitten by a dog. Let's say just a little snap by a dog, nothing serious. But their implicit memory might be, okay, dogs are unsafe. I'm scared of dogs. Now they're an adult. They don't even know the story that they had that little bite snap from the dog because it wasn't that big for the parents. Now they're an adult, they come and see me and they're like, you know what, every time I go in the park and I hear a dog barking or I see a dog running up to me, I start sweating, I start feeling uneasy, I don't know what's going on, I don't understand, I never had a bad experience with a dog, or I never remember a bad experience with a dog, because it's stored as an implicit memory.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. All right. Yeah, I had another guest that like you studies the brain and studies the brain waves, and he kind of touched on that as well, that certain things might have happened to you that you don't even remember, or that happened to you with, like when you were born. Like he said something happened to him when he was born, didn't know it, and then found out later that's why he wasn't sleeping at 30. Like it's wild what
Mm,
your mind remembers but like doesn't remember.
it's crazy. And you know what? That's the interesting thing. So those things that you were just talking about, they get triggered by a certain stimuli. So that could be, with the dog example, the barking of a dog. The barking of the dog triggers the nervous system response back to what happened when the child was a year old. It's so interesting, and that's a lot
Very.
of the times. And that's the cool thing with the approach that I'm taking. We don't need to know the root cause, because we're not always going to know. And sometimes we're going to think that that's the root cause. But what if something happened way earlier?
True.
We don't know. We don't know anything, really. We don't know anything when it comes to those early memories. And another interesting thing, I don't know, have you heard about the attachment theory?
Yes.
So when we look at the attachment theory, it's all about the relationship we have with our early caregivers from birth. Because we look for safety, we look for emotional stability, food and all of that stuff. Yes, but when we talk about relationship, that's what we look for. Now the interesting thing is those attachment experiences are stored as those implicit memories that I've told you. So they're not stored as a memory. Okay, I remember how my mom was with me. Yes, they'll remember that when they're older, but from birth on. And they are stored by what the baby or the little one has felt, not what was said to it. So let's say a mom keeps saying to the baby, "Oh, I really, really love you," but doesn't show it emotionally. The child picks up on what it's felt and not what is said to the child. So those attachment experiences is so fascinating, and I'm presenting in America about those. Are stored as felt experiences, and they shape how we act in relationships when we're an adult, how safe we feel, how open we can be, or how much can we be ourselves. And they are just from those felt experiences from birth onwards.
That's exactly what he talked about. His mom didn't hold him for the first like year of his life, didn't even know that, and that was what was making him anxious and not sleep. Like just wild.
So interesting when you study that, but it's also so interesting, and that's what I tell all my
It
clients.
is interesting.
We can heal from all of that. We can really. No one has to be stuck in the past. It doesn't matter what has happened, or how great or how non-great or how traumatic or non-traumatic that childhood was, or we can heal from it. We can really rewire our brain.
I just love how this is coming full circle, and now we're getting two examples of like why it's so important. And something I think I would love to hear you talk about too is what has been one of the most rewarding things about working with people on this level?
Well, I would say definitely the client from the book, because
Mhm.
she's now out living again from not even being able to leave the house, and have suicidal ideation and all of that. But I really, every client is kind of rewarding, because most of my clients that I work with have anxiety or have experienced trauma. To see them from not leaving the house or not even being able to work, to going back to their job again, to maybe being a better mom again or a better parent. It's just it's a rewarding thing to do, because I know how it is to be on the other end. I know how it is to be hopeless, alone, and feeling like there's no way out. And that's one thing that I would love to actually share with everyone. I just encourage people, if you are in that space where you feel that hopeless and alone, don't give up. Even if it feels like you've tried everything. I felt like that. My client in the book felt like that. But you haven't tried everything. And I'm not saying hypnosis is the right approach for everyone, but just be open and try a few other things. Don't think just because you've tried a couple of things that there's no hope, because that's what keeps you stuck. Keep trying. Don't give up. There's so many different ways of healing. And you might just have to find the right approach for you, or even the right practitioner for you, because hypnotherapist is also not hypnotherapist. Not every hypnotherapist is the same. So it's really important to just don't give up. because there is hope. And this is why I've also written that book, because I know she felt hopeless, but I also felt hopeless.
And do you have any other last words of wisdom, book recommendations, anything that you would really like to leave my listeners with?
Well, I would encourage you to, if you have experienced trauma, if you have, you are struggling with anxiety, to buy my book. I don't know if you can put the link on somewhere, or if we
Yes,
can.
it will.
It's
It will
called.
absolutely be in the show notes.
Cool. It's called Shine from Trauma, and I might also give you my website. So if anybody is looking for hypnotherapy sessions or one-on-one sessions, you can just go on my website. You can book a free call with me. We can have a chat to see if I can help you, to see what you need help with. I don't afterwards bug people. It's your choice if you want to work with me, because the person needs to want it. So even
Right.
if we have a free call, I don't spam you with anything. It's then in your hands. I'm going to tell you how I work with you, what's involved, what you get from me, what I need from you. And then if you feel like it's the right approach, then we can work together. But, reaching out doesn't harm, and just having a chat.
No, it never is harmful to have a chat. And especially since you offer it for free, there's really no reason not to do it.
100%, 100%. Don't give up. Don't stay struggling. You don't need to.
Yeah, you have all the resources here. And thank you, Connie, so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing.
And this is how to deal when the shit gets real, guys. I will see you all next episode.